And you are watching live coverage of the Mackinac Policy Conference here on Detroit Public Television. So this week, we are talking a lot about the power of and some folks who aren't just thinking about the power of but they're actually doing it are here right now. We've got Jeff Bohm. He is chair of the St. Clair County Commission. We've got Randy Maiers, president and CEO of the Community Foundation of St. Clair, and Josh Chapman, president and CEO of the YMCA Bluewater. Hello, you three.
Hello.
Hey, thanks for
It's
having
so
us.
good to see you all here. So, Jeff, in the Bluewater area, you're really leaning into and living this theme already of the power of by using public-private partnerships to benefit your community. Can you describe what this actually looks like in your community on a day-to-day basis?
So it started back in like 2009, 2010 when we really figured out no one's coming to save us. It ultimately came out of the height of the economic downturn. So we got a lot of the community leadership. There's 35 to 40 of us that meet every couple months. We go to larger planning sessions. Where we have, 80 to 100 people to actually vet different projects, and really just a great collaboration. I know it sounds somewhat cliche, but we actually do it. We live it. We breathe it in St. Clair County. And I think if you look at just with like the policy conference, we have 20 people from St. Clair County that represent the, private sector, the nonprofits, foundation, so on and so forth up here.
Yeah. Randy, does that resonate with you, this idea that no one was going to come save you and you had to do it yourself?
Yeah, ironically, it was a great turning point.
Yeah.
Looking back, we realized that if we look at each other in the face and we realize we're the ones either going to make it or break it, we got to take ownership of it.
Yeah.
We got to start sharing more, communicating more. It really was a turning point for us.
Josh, you wrote about this work recently in Bridge, Michigan, and making sure that you're getting the right experts in the room to do the work. Yeah. So there's the initial sort of step one, which is realizing there's a problem. Yeah. Then there's the step two of who's going to be there at the table. How does that work, and who are the right people to make this public-private partnerships actually succeed?
Yeah, so I think that's the beautiful thing is that there's no ego, right? So Jeff is looking at a child care center. He calls me. And we start chatting about it, and he's like, "Well, I just thought you opened up, we drop our kids off, and you go, right?" So there's no ego in the process of what we do. It's we find, we vet, and we bring the best to the table, and we get stuff done.
Yeah. So you also talked about making sure that the room is a safe space for honest conversation. I assume that leaving the ego at the door is part of that, but what does that look like in theory to have a safe space for these conversations?
Yeah, so it doesn't do anybody any good if we come in and we don't tell each other our honest opinion and perspective. That's why we're there, and I think again that speaks to why we've been so successful. We have the tough conversations. We call things like we see them. We don't always get Christmas cards, but there's no hurt feelings and no ill will. Yeah. But it's important to put everything on the table. You can't solve it unless you know what you're dealing with.
Randy, that feels like building some new muscle memory. I know you've been doing it for more than a decade, but that's not always the first way folks come to a table.
Yeah, it's culture change, right? It's organizations have to be willing to share what our strategic priorities are. Where do we find overlap in priorities? Agree we're going to disagree at times. But like at the conference here, you can disagree and still be respectful about it. But it is culture change. It's system change. It's muscle memory, right? You've got to do things differently. You can't hide in your office when things get bleak and wonder why things don't change. You've really got to get out. So it does take repetition, getting together on a regular basis, talking to people like Josh over daycare, housing, talent attraction, and being honest.
So, Jeff, if another county or institution or group came to you and said, "Oh, Sage, where do we start? How do we even begin this work?"
It's funny you say that because we have had other communities to reach out to us because we've had some pretty good publications that have talked about our Blue Meat Screen and some of the things that we do. And I think we're small enough that it's manageable enough, too. And I'm not, throwing stones, but it's not too big that we can handle it. We put some of the brightest minds in the room, and to reiterate what Josh said, I mean, there are just some good, hard discussions, on different things, and it doesn't get offensive. I'm an idea guy. I always say, I got 10 ideas, 2 or 3 of them are really good, 2 or 3 of them are okay, and 2 or 3 of them are really bad. So, but just to get that dialogue out there and to have that conversation, it's important. It's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
that has helped change St. Clair County's path. And I've been on the board 18 years.
Yeah.
I've seen the siloistic approach when everybody had their own money, nobody had to play nice together, so on and so forth. And ironically, probably one of the best things that came out of the bad economy was this, our Blue Meets Green group, which these guys are, part of that group and really has set the tone moving forward in our county.
Yeah. Randy, same question to you. If someone said, how do I start this tomorrow or yesterday?
Yeah.
What do you tell them to do?
Yeah. Well, you've got to be willing to have county leadership and business, private sector recognize philanthropy, right? And if they don't, then philanthropy needs to reach out. So we have community foundations all over Michigan, all over America. You need to reach out to leaders in the community and say, I care about prosperity. I care about growth in Michigan. I care about population and talent attraction. Let me have us out at the table. And fortunately, in our region, we have spots at the table for the voices.
Josh, how do you go about finding those folks, right? Like you've decided this is what I want to do, but how do you find like-minded folks and stakeholders to come to that table with you? What should someone do?
Yeah, so I think going on the approach of we don't want necessarily everyone to be like-minded, right? We do want to have a shared vision and a shared goal, but it's okay to disagree. And it takes the 5 extra minutes, right? So it's easy to pick up the phone and call the person that you always work with or the person that you always deal with. But taking those 5 extra minutes vetting and doing some research and it doesn't need to be you, right? So pick up the phone, shoot the text, call somebody and ask for help and you'd be surprised what people will do for you.
Well, it probably builds a more interesting table than of stakeholders, too, because it's not a bunch of folks just thinking like you are or doing the same work that you're doing or look just like you.
Yeah.
And I think we've all had these conversations over the years that the more diverse stakeholders, the richer it's going to be in practice.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's as the relatively young delegate in the room, many times, the challenges on childcare, for instance, or K-12, is much more felt in my home than it may be in Randy or Jeff. So it's looking, when we look at diversity, looking at all of the dimensions, right? And because really that gives us all the perspective. So when we put together our strategy and priorities, we're successful coming out of the chute.
Yeah. Jeff, so much right now in society, feel like it's really bogged down in just political and cultural divides, right? Like it feels like you can't turn on anything without hearing this fight over this policy fight. You guys, again, in Bridge, Michigan, write that partisan politics is barely, if ever, mentioned in your partnerships. So I guess it's a double-barreled question. I'm assuming that's on purpose, right? But in this environment, how do you make sure that politics stays out when it just sort of feels top of mind in everything?
We just don't go there. You know, good ideas, and I always say this, whether you're a Republican or Democrat, a good idea always comes to the top of the list, right? So by going through the vetting process, my vote doesn't weigh any more than Randy's or weigh any more than Josh's. So it's always interesting when we do those because everybody kind of sees the same thing. Like I said, the good ideas rise to the forefront. And it's by design. We do not, like I said, the political piece of it, we don't bring that to the room because I think we know where that ends and yelling and screaming and kicking, you know, and that can be counterproductive.
Yeah.
And we're talking county-wide priorities, a lot of bricks and mortar, different things, a lot of initiatives that we're trying to get behind. So I don't necessarily know that if they necessarily are heavy political topics too, they're just the good, right things to do for your county.
Randy, is it that easy to keep politics out of it?
It can be a struggle, but you know what it takes is people that have been around long enough to speak up when someone wants to creep it in and say, that's not what we do here. That's not how we handle things. You've got to be willing to speak up and say, no, we're not bringing that into the table, right? We all live in a small community. Michigan's a small community, right? Port Huron and St. Clair County is a small community. If you have the clout and the ability and the longevity, speak up and say, hey, we got to work for the common good. We got to stay focused on what's important today.
Josh, does that resonate with you?
Absolutely. Doing what's right is doing what's right. So it doesn't matter, donkey or elephant. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to create prosperity for all.
Yeah.
We're trying to make our little part of the world the best place it can be. And there is no political involvement. And when it does get there, I just leave. So it all works out.
And if everybody gets up at once, there can't be
It's all done, right?
Exactly. There's no more quorum for that then. Jeff, this week we're also talking a lot about population. right? And trying to get folks to stay in Michigan, come to Michigan, build their lives in Michigan. Has that been a North Star, right, about having people come to St. Clair and building home and family there?
So quality of place, we talk about it a lot. And, I have two kids, 23 and 20. They like our communities that we live in. There's a lot of entertainment. There's cultural types of things. That placemaking, I think, is the first place you need to start with, bars and restaurants and nightlife to get some of the younger kids to come back, right? When I got out of college 100 years ago, you were going to New York, you were going to Chicago. You were right. And now I have a lot of this groups of these kids that they don't want the big city stuff. They want to come back home. But that has to do, and I think Randy can speak to this, with their foundation. They do a lot of place-making type of initiatives, fund those things to, really, you got to have cool things for kids to do. You got to have cool things for adults to do, right? Or you're not going to come and visit and, make it your home.
Randy, that speaks to you?
Yeah, we've been fortunate. We've had a long history of focusing on placemaking, and then when you average or include the lens of economic development, downtown prosperity, it goes well. On the little coast of Michigan over on the east side where we're at, when you've got waterfront towns, great activities in the downtown waterfront, it's a great place.
Yeah, Josh, I'm going to look to you as the younger generation here. What do you see as St. Clair and working towards not just getting population, but that sort of workforce who's going to build the next generation in the county?
I think it's taking a comprehensive approach, right?
Yeah.
So we can't look at all these issues independently. So we've got to attack housing. We've got to attack the education system, pre-K to graduation. We've got to look at placemaking. So, I think it's the continued effort of bringing the players to the table and ensuring if they're successful, if you build it, they will come. So I think it's building all of those different things that people want.
Well, as we wrap up here quickly, I want to ask all three of you. Josh, I'll start with you. Are you optimistic that other regions, other communities in Michigan could adopt this model and be as successful as you all are?
Absolutely. If you want to be successful, I think we've laid out a great blueprint, and we've got a track record to speak to our success. So the proof is in the pudding, as they say. So,
Randy?
Yeah, I think we're already seeing the Houghton Hancock area, the Saginaw Bay, Bay City, Midland area, Flint, Northern Michigan. They've all reached out to us at some point. I definitely think collaboration as a region, a natural, organic region, is the way to go.
Jeff, you optimistic?
Hey, I see Macomb County, their leadership right there. Don Brown, the chairman, he can lead them to the promised land. I've got some confidence in him. But we have it's funny because we have a great working relationship with Macomb County. Yeah. It's so important for Macomb County to do well, for St. Clair County to do well, because a lot of our people live there, but, almost 40% of our people seek employment outside of, and then they come back. So it's kudos to the guys from Macomb County and doing everything that they are over there. They're a big part of our success.
Jeff, Randy, Josh, thank you for the time and thanks for the work that you're doing.